Hey, what's happening, everybody? Appreciate you tuning back into another video. I am going to get into a bunch of stuff today. I have a bunch of news. I'm going to go over very briefly in Profit Trailer, but mainly we're going to do Bitcoin technical analysis, give you guys my thoughts on the market. Before I jump into that, please, if you have the heart in you, go down and hit that thumbs up button for me. It really helps out the video to gain more traction and get more viewership so we can expose the channel to more people. I really appreciate that, especially to all you loyal subscribers. I really appreciate you guys commenting on the video and whatnot. So with that said, we're just going to jump right in. If you've been watching Bitcoin over the weekend, we've actually been holding real steady. And if I update this, I think we're even higher. Yeah, so Bitcoin is almost at 7,100. So we've been floating within the range of 6,900 to 7,100. And these are really pivotal. This is a really pivotal area right now. Bitcoin is going to be tested really significantly in the next week. And I'll tell you why. But before we get into like the Bitcoin technical analysis, just look down at all this green. Don't be surprised if you see a bunch of red tomorrow. But this is good news, especially if you're using Profit Trailer and PT Feeder. Those links will be in the description. I'm not trying to like shill those products, but I've been using those and having some pretty nice luck over the past few days. And I've been honing in my settings to sort of protect myself from a potential downside. So if we go into my sales log, you'll see I'm playing with real small money, and that's because I'm messing with my settings, right? And like obviously I have 15 pairs in my pair log. I'm holding a lot of coins from well before the massive rise. So, I have some significantly negative pairs, but all these, this 85 sells, are from the past maybe 4 or 5 days. And so imagine if I was, I'm just honing in the settings right now, but I mean, I'm making $7 per trade here. I'm making $1.11, a dollar. And like I said, these are super small because I'm honing in the settings. I'm just getting the idea. But even my DCA log is not super nasty. There's one here at negative 6%. It's a little bit nasty, but I set up with stop loss sells, so just in case this thing gets going a little too negative, after DCAing, I will sell it for a loss and get out of there. But I've made about $80 in the past 4 days or so. If we look at my sell log, I think it goes back to this is only back to the 7th, so 2 days ago, 3 days ago. But I mean, this is working. So especially in this market that we're looking at, I'll do another Profit Trailer update. I know a lot of people on this channel don't necessarily like the trading bot stuff, but if you're looking at this, there's a lot of opportunity for us to make some money. Now, the problem is what's going to happen with Bitcoin? Where are we sitting? So this is what I'm looking at. I'm going to dig into the 4-hour. Oops, that's a 3-hour. I'm going to dig into the 4-hour time frame here. And I apologize if this is a little bit small for you if you're watching on a phone. I recommend watching on a computer if you can. But basically what we're sitting at here is I'm looking, obviously this is our last downtrend, down to like 58, 6,000, somewhere in that range. I'm looking at this as an ABC correction at the moment. And if you look at this, this was our low around 5,800, 5,900, 6,000, somewhere in there, whatever you want to call it. And then this was another low. But if you look at this, this is technically a higher low because we're sitting at about 6,400. That should hold as a nice support line. Now, will it? We'll find out. And I'll give you guys a couple options of what I think is going to happen in the next week. And we're going to need to be looking at the volume quite a bit. So what I'm looking at here is an ABC, and it's a 535 correction wave. So we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down, and we have an ABC on our way up to make our B wave. And then we have another 5 waves down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down to the C. Now, what we're experiencing right now, in my opinion, this is the more bearish outlook, okay? So just keep this in mind. We could be experiencing, this would be a 535. We could be experiencing a 5-3-5-3 and then 5 again down. And so that would look something more along the lines of wherever the C ends up ending. And ideally it would end somewhere up in this range, above the $7,200 mark. And I'll explain why. I'd like it to see I'd like to see Bitcoin above 7,500, to be honest, before I'm super confident. But this would be a 5, 3, 5, 3, 5 down. So that would be my next bearish count. This is something that I would be looking at. And then what I would be looking at as well is this Fibonacci retracement to get our ideal stopping points. And I'll tell you why I would like to see it above the 72, 7,500 mark. And that's because of this 0.786 line is sitting at about $7,200. Okay. So this is a big resistance line. As you can see, we acted as it acted as support for a while, but it acted as resistance here, and here again we got rejected, and then we bounced up over it, and then we just cut through it like butter, and we're approaching this line again. So what's possible is this C ends up ending, and this is more of the bear count, but more or less something like this could happen where we just get rejected from this 0.786 line and we rip on back down to the 6,000 mark, where our previous low was, and we could see 5 waves down to there. That wouldn't be out of the question, I don't think. It could look something like this with a smaller 5 wave, which is very possible. I mean, this is pretty small. But another idea is people are saying, okay, it could go lower, and this may not be our official low. We probably have another low coming. And so my two price ranges would range between about this line, which is at about 5,800, and 5,500. Some people are even calling all the way down to 5K, which is because of this right in here. So some people are calling this region. And then the real big bears are calling way down here, which I don't see yet. I just don't see that. But it's possible if you shrink this down a bit, and some people are calling for the $3,000, the $3,200 mark, which would be somewhere kind of up in this region. I don't really see this. I'm not that bearish. I'm actually quite bullish on this. Maybe not in the super short term, and it's kind of a no trade zone for me right now, just FYI for everybody wondering. I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. And basically, I've talked about volume in my previous videos and how I wasn't too worried, because if you look back in time in volume, you can kind of get an idea of like, whoa, we're still way ahead of where we were at the beginning of this bull market. But the problem is you need a good amount of volume to go up in price, but you don't need a lot of volume to go down in price. And that's kind of what we've been experiencing, is the volume is just slowly coming and grinding to a halt. And I've drawn the descending wedges from our all-time high. Sorry if I'm giving people like epilepsy or something while I'm moving this around. It's kind of like a nervous reflex or something. But I've drawn these descending wedges here, and there's a bunch of different fractals. There's like 4 fractals that we've seen play out almost exactly the same way. And if you go back like 2 or 3 videos ago that I made, you'll be able to see that. And basically, when you get to the apex of one of these sort of descending wedges like this, you start to see volume get real small towards the apex, and then all of a sudden it explodes. And generally speaking, at the bottom of a descending wedge, you're going to see a bullish volume, a bullish spike in price, and you'll jump up. And so we're actually at the bottom pretty much, and this is super rough. I'm not even drawing this super accurately. I'm trying to get through this quick. But we're at like the apex of this giant wedge here, this triangle. And so volume is grinding to a halt. And I called in a couple videos ago that this would kind of spike up and we would have this sort of descending wedge here. I kind of expected this to happen. Something like this. I don't exactly know what I drew in my last video, but it was something like this. Volume sort of bounced up super high right in this region. It dropped drastically right here, and then it bounced high. We got up to this recent high at 70, 74.99, 7,500, and then we fell back down again, and now this descending wedge is getting even smaller. And then guess what happened? Our volume grinded to a halt, and then we had some nice green candles and we spiked up. But the thing is, the volume is getting smaller and smaller each time. And I think that's possible that that's happening is because we're getting closer to this apex. And another reason I think that's happening is because of, people are waiting for this thing to drop again. And we need this to really hit a nice groove. So that way the average investors and even the institutional investors and the big guys can come in and say, okay, we're at a solid support line. We're above the, 55-day EMA, where the death cross is no longer in effect. We need people to start looking at this in a more bullish manner. And once that happens, the FOMO will start to kick in a little bit more, because right now everybody's scared that it's just going to drop because all the news, all the videos, everything that's coming out is like, oh, it's going to 3K. But I think that once we see a definitive rise above what I was saying here, like above the $7,500 mark on the daily candles, I will be happy if we close somewhere up in this region in like the 75. And that's when, like right above this peak, we created a low. This was our all-time low or our recent low of the big correction at 6,800. This is a higher low. Now we need to create a higher high. And the way we can do that is we can do it right up in here at like the $7,500 mark. We'll have created a higher high and a higher low. And we already created another higher low right here. And so the bulls just need to come in and they need to continue to create these higher highs and higher lows. As minimal as they are, it's a good sign every time you see it. And it feels like the bears, even though the short selling volume is as high as it's ever been, the bears seem to be losing steam. And one way you can kind of look at this is when the short selling volume gets this high, because this was the all-time high previously, right? Somewhere in like January or whatever. When these things go on like their meteoric rises, what tends to happen is they kind of get flushed out and liquidated, because these big whales, these big players who come in and see, okay, there's a lot of people betting that this thing's going to go down. Well, how can I make money? I have a lot of money. I'm going to go in, I'm going to pump this price up, and I'm going to freaking liquidate all these short selling, and I'm going to make all the money. Forget those guys. So it's kind of like, you got to really read between the lines and look at how these big institutional investors, these big whales that are coming into this market, how they would think. They're not trying to go with the crowds. They're going against the crowds, and that's why they're making their money. So that's the way I look at it. It's possible that we continue to make higher lows and higher highs, and that'd be great, because once we get up to this line, the 82, if we can cross over this 0.618, so at 8,200, if we cross a daily candle above this, I will be 100% convinced that we are out of this bear market, and I will be convinced that this was our bottom. And that would make a lot of sense, because a lot of times you look at these big, huge V bottoms and the volume was massive. And this was probably some of the most volume that we've really ever had in history. I mean, there's been a couple other times that we've had some major volume, but on a daily candle, I believe that was the most volume we ever had. So yeah, if you look at that right there, so that's generally what you look for in the bottom. It doesn't always play out that way. Like, you got to remember that, but it is what it is. So that brings me to my next thing. I want to talk about George Soros. Basically, he's coming into the crypto markets. We're just going to briefly touch on this. I'm sure you guys have already heard about this, but George Soros basically called Bitcoin a bubble in January, and now his $26 billion family office is planning to trade these digital assets. And that's really big news, because when people like George Soros and all of these big hedge fund guys, right, when they start to get involved in this industry, we're definitely going to see not necessarily a spike in price, because these guys, like I said, they like to do opposite. They have unconventional thinking. But this is good news for crypto as a whole, because it kind of legitimizes it. And we're just going to have to take it day by day with how these guys are really messing with the markets, because George Soros could come in and just put in, a few $1 billion on short volume, and all of a sudden the price just drops like a stone. So it's really difficult to tell, but we just got to take it day by day and see how it affects us. So into the next bit of news. Right. So the next one that I want to get into is Coinbase Ventures. Basically, Coinbase Ventures is a venture capital kind of firm or idea that Coinbase is going to start to implement. Basically, they're going to be providing financing to companies, early stage companies like startups and they'll have the teams and the ideas that can move the space forward in a positive and meaningful way. Basically, Coinbase is just becoming, they're like branching off and they're becoming a venture capital firm for the crypto markets in general. And I think that's really cool. It's really smart of Coinbase. I think that, being an exchange is a really lucrative business, but then being involved in venture capital is probably even more lucrative. So that's probably pretty smart of them. And then I also agree with this paragraph here. It says, as Vitalik said so well in December last year, the digital currency ecosystem has the opportunity to transform the lives of billions of people, but we have only just scratched the surface of what is possible. And I totally agree. If you look at the coin market cap, we're at 1,560 different coins. There are a ton of coins in here that are completely useless and they have no right even like having a coin. And the only reason they have a coin is, they want the notoriety and they want the publicity and the money, right? And there's a lot of scams going on. But if you really look into it and go back into this, there are so many problems that are being tackled on a global scale by these different cryptocurrency companies. And we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible. And for us as investors of the type of returns that we might see in the next 5 or 10 years, like we're kind of going through what they would say like the dot-com bubble crash. But if you would have bought all these different major Fortune 500 company stocks right now, back then when Amazon was just selling books, they weren't selling anything else. They were just selling books. If you would have bought them back then, you would be sitting on a pile of cash. So this is what I think is really cool. We literally are just scratching the surface. Now you have to be very competent and you have to do your due diligence and look at these coins before you invest. And I have a couple videos of this on my channel, but you really need to make sure that these coins have a true value and they truly have a use case, so that way their coin will go increase in value over time. Because if you're buying the coin and you're not using their product or service, then you are literally like, and you just think you're investing in the coin, but you have no idea why it should go up in value, then you're wasting your money and you're gonna lose. And then a lot of these coins are going to go out of business. It's just the way it is. But I think this is cool. Coinbase Ventures is cool. They're going to be investing in some cool startups, and I think that's a cool idea. India's exchange. So we've talked about this a little bit. India's exchanges want to challenge central banks' crypto crackdown. So this is kind of an interesting article. I'll probably leave this one in the link in the description. But basically, they're talking to see if they could help us getting a hearing at the Supreme Court to see if stay orders are possible on the current decision of the RBI. I mean, if you've done any reading about the RBI and what India has done with crypto, read this article a little bit, look into it, look into all of that stuff. I just wanted to touch on it super briefly. It says exchanges in India are discussing ways to fight back against a new edict from the country's central bank, which ordered the institutions it regulates to stop working with companies that offer cryptocurrency services. So startups like UnoCoin, CoinSecure, and ZebPay have warned about political disruptions to their services if their banking providers pull out of the market as ordered in the next 3 months. So, India, there's a bunch of India FUD, and that's kind of why I think we probably saw a little bit of a decrease in price a couple days ago when this actually came out. So right around here, what was that, like the 6th? So yeah, exactly, April 6th, that's when it came out. So that makes sense. More good news, though, that doesn't really get publicized too often is the Securities Exchange Commission is considering a rule change that might allow Bitcoin ETFs to be listed on exchanges. According to a document posted on the SEC website, the agency has begun the process to approve or disapprove a change in its rules that allows 2 Bitcoin ETFs to be listed on the NYSE exchange. And that is huge. So if you think about this, so a lot of people think that like institutional money is what we need. We need a bunch of institutional money to come in and buy Bitcoin, and it's going to skyrocket us to the moon. And while that sounds really great, that's really not how the institutional money really thinks and operates. They want to win in whatever way that they can. So if they can win by shorting, they'll do that. If they can win by buying options, or if they can win by doing whatever they can. And in a market this small, they can kind of manipulate the prices in whatever way they want. So that's something we have to keep in mind. But with ETFs is very interesting because this kind of opens up crypto to the retail investor. This opens up crypto to some really broad range of investment type people, right? So I think the next step after ETFs will be, I know you can already buy Bitcoin in 401ks and stuff, but having legitimate ETFs and index funds that offer Bitcoin and different cryptocurrencies, different altcoins, this will really pump up the volume and pump up the legitimacy to these cryptos and really give us a nice path to $1 trillion market cap and beyond. And a lot of the really wealthy and smart guys, especially even people in the SEC, are talking about how crypto could have a 10 trillion, a 20 trillion market cap by 2020. And that goes alongside with Mr. Crazy McAfee, who's really psycho, but he's funny to listen to. And he still thinks it's going to be $1 million by 2020 or whatever he said. So all of these things are what can drive it there. Okay. And we need all of these things to kind of line up. Even regulation, we need regulation. Regulation is necessary in order to bring in this kind of money. You're not going to have literal casual retail investments and 401k investments in crypto if it's not heavily regulated. And a lot of people are going to run and hide from that, but I think it's probably necessary, and it's 100% going to happen. So we roll with the punches. If you're in crypto to make money, then roll with the punches and make money the way that you have to make money, or else you're going to be kind of shunned out of this market by the governments and stuff. But yeah, I think this is cool. This is really good news. ETFs getting on board. That would be really awesome if the SEC allows that in the near term. And I think what we're waiting for here is sometime in this week. We're looking for a volume spike, just to kind of give you guys a recap. And I'm a firm believer that news doesn't just come out randomly. I think sometimes it does. But when it comes to these financial markets, I think that it's kind of played. So when you see some news this week, check your trades, check what's going on in the markets, because if you see some really good news, then I think it's possible that this sort of 5-leg down kind of goes away, and maybe we start to test this 0.618 line over the next week or two. But if you see some really heavy FUD and, the SEC is declining all of this stuff, or like the India stuff gets worse, then, kind of take it with a grain of salt, but check what is happening to the markets and be aware, be prepared in both directions. So I gave you 2 options. If we can get above this 0.618, about 8,200, even if we get up to like the $7,500 mark and close a candle, I'll be happy. If not, and we get rejected from this 0.786, we're probably going down, whether or not it's past the 6,000, or, if it's at the 6,000 or if it's past it, that's something we're going to just have to watch and wait and see. So with that said, guys, I'm going to do a profit trailer PT feeder, video update tomorrow, and I will catch you on the next one. Please comment on the video. If you liked it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you need profit trailer PT feeder, not a lot of people make it this far in the video, but if you are still watching, profit trailer is apparently going to become a subscription model from what I've heard on the street. And same with PT feeder. I'm not too sure about feeder, but profit trailer, they're going to be launching version 2. And it might be going subscription. So if you do need to pick up profit trailer, I would recommend getting it now, and you will not have to pay the subscription fee. All Profit Trailer current subscription people, all the people who already purchased the license, will not be affected by the subscription costs. So it's only going to be for new customers. So I highly recommend getting that if you are even considering it. Other than that, I'll catch you all in the next video. Take it easy, guys.